Now, today we will add to the communion experience with the addition of taking a few moments to prepare our hearts and minds for sacred instruction. Now, this portion requires the use of one gold raw candle and or one white nectar candle and quality frankincense, which is called seneter in the Kemetic tradition, which translates as divine fragrance. If you don't have these things, it's also fine. You can still gain value from this process nevertheless. So let us begin. Now, as you light your candles and your incense, take a few moments and allow the spirit of quietude to alight upon you. And then sooner before later, you'll notice that something as unassuming as lighting a candle and burning incense can make you instantly and automatically relax. Relaxation leads to your peace. Your peace opens the way to your power. And as you sit with an aura of calmness and contemplate the energy of the day, with every inhalation and exhalation, all static energy, stagnant energy, and negative energy gets pushed outwards and away until only you remain, perfectly centered and calm, like the black dot in the center of the circle, or the symbol of Ra. Now, after your next few breaths, you'll be ready to emerge, relaxed, refreshed, and renewed, and fully capable of grasping the lessons and the layers of today's sacred instruction. Amen. Ma'at. Iyiti, and welcome to the Communion Experience. Once again, this is your host, the Nasut Bidi Rasanku Kepper, Chief and Head Priest of the Templeofanu, facilitating our bi-weekly discussions about how to walk in peace and power by way of the teachings of the ancient Kemetic legacy. So before we start it off, let me say big up to the righteous and respectable chat, all those who are here front and center at the appropriate time, because our philosophy is early is on time and on time is late. So all communions are for you first. So let us know, even though this is a pre-record, continue to let us know who you are and where you are sounding off at, and we'll meet you in the back end in the chats. So now let us proceed to get into what we call the word of the day. Now, the word of the day is when we take one word from the ancient hieroglyphic language called Sesh Medu Neter, the divine written words, or Jed Medu, the spoken words, or even Rani Kemet, the language of Kemet. So we take the word and we give you its basic definition according to all the known books and scholarship on it, but then we do something special. We then expound on it metaphorically and metaphysically for further import and application in our lives. So let us proceed with the word of the day. Now, the word of the day is Mut. Mut is the word of the day. This word consists of only 3 letters. The first one consists of an owl. You should all be familiar with many of these letters because there's only so many letters that you could use to speak words. So we've been doing these lessons of the day all year, so you should be building up your vocabulary as well as your understanding to the approach to the language. So the first symbol is that of an owl, and it's the letter M. It represents the letter M and the sound value of the sound value of or m or me. The second symbol is that of a loaf or that of a piece of bread, and it represents the letter T with the sound value of T or ta. And lastly, you have the determinative, which has no sound value, but it implies the interpretation of the word. And it is a very ominous figure of a man what appears to be with an axe to his head. So what does this word mut mean? The word mut means death or to die, which is interesting because in the Kemetic philosophy, according to the Kemetic philosophy, there is no such thing as death in a static sense of the meaning. We understand death to be the doorway to another life or another type of life. So let us go to the top and see if we can expound on this approach to the word. So now we start with the owl, which is interesting because I seen an interview the other day by Kaba Khamenei, also known as Booker T. Coleman, an excellent scholar. He has the spirit of Jehuti, articulate thought, word, and speech. He was given his exposition on the word kemet and why he believes or perceives it to mean the color black. So he's one of the only people that I see approaches the language from an esoteric perspective. So he was expounding on the owl in a profound way. He went on to say that the owl in many indigenous societies represents wisdom. The owl is also a creature of the night. The owl, when he turns his head, it could turn his head in almost a whole full 360-degree rotation. So could this possibly be talking about awareness, the awareness of the cyclical nature of life? Since the owl is a creature of the night, we call ourselves light beings in the Kemetic tradition. There's a lot of light metaphors for consciousness and for divinity. We even have a text or a scripture known as Reyu Pert Im Heru Im Ger. But light, in order for light to know itself, it needs to be juxtapositioned amongst the background of blackness, the contrast itself. So we have the text called the Reyu Pert Im Heru Im Ger, which is the chapters of coming forth by day from the night. Now, when you look at the words her and ger, it is almost the same word, and it's only an accent or inflection that helps you determine the difference between the two. So her, as in heru, represents day or light, and then there's ger, or ger, which represents darkness or night. And that's an interesting connection when you look at how the language works. Now, the next symbol is that of the loaf of bread. The loaf of bread is literally an alchemical symbol. And for those who don't understand what alchemy is, the alchemy is the art of taking a substance and transforming it from one state to the next state. So it's not necessarily talking about metal, that would be chemistry, but alchemistry is a spiritual science talking about transforming one state of consciousness to the next state of consciousness. And bread is a symbol, or alchemical symbol, to transform something from one state to the next. So it's literally bread starts from a piece of dough that moisture gets added to, and you have to knead the dough. And the bread in its original state is useless. It is not consumable. It has to be prepared through doughing and through kneading and prompting, and then it has to be put into the oven to go through the fires of what they call calcination. And only when it goes through the fire, then the bread rises. So could it be, when we look at this word mut, it is telling us through the owl and the bread about the cyclical nature of life, and that which is fallen or that which is flattened will rise again. Well, let us go further and look at the determinative of the word. And the determinative is what we said, the ominous figure of a man who it appears to be with an axe in his head. So we know that when the brain ceases to function, there is no longer any quality of life. There is no function of life. There may still be some electrical pulses or currents going on, but there will be no consciousness or no quality of life. And it's interesting that they use the axe to the head, because some interpret the word neter, the symbol for neter, to be that of an axe. And then we also teach that neter exists within us as us. So could it be telling us about the cyclical nature of life, that man or the human, a man and women, somehow they have, on some level, some energetic level, consciously or subconsciously, their death comes by way of their own hands or their own doing or their own undoing on some level or another. So there you have it. You have the word mut, means death. I know some people may say, well, how does mut means death? And I thought mut represents the mother. So why is the mother associated with death? And it's probably because the word mut for mother literally is that of a vulture. Vulture is the mother. And the vulture is the personification of the zoomorphic personification of the neteret or the neteret mut. And who is mut? Mut is the consort or the counterpart of the neter amen, one of the most popular neteru of Kemet. So she's the consort of Amen, and their offspring is Kansu. That is the holy trinity of Waset, known to be Thebes or known as Luxor. But we won't get into this trinity or what that means because this is not a theological lesson for tonight. So Mut is the vulture, and the vulture is sometimes connected with death because the vulture is the mother who feeds her children off of the carcasses of dead bodies. However, though, the vulture has the ability to determine when the corpse is completely rotten and unusable, and they feed their children right before that stage when the carcass is unusable and there's still some nutrient value for her children. So that may be the reason why Mut represents the mother and the mother represents death. So we have the word Mut represents death and the Mut for mother. So the only, they sound phonetically the same, but the only way to determine the difference in the written word is by the determinative at the end of the word. Remember, so we have the owl, the loaf of bread, and then we have the determinative with the man with the axe in his head. That's mut, means death. So when we look at the word mut for mother, it is the owl. And sometimes it's a spiral in there, and that represents the sound value of ooh. And then there's the bread, and then the determinative would be the vulture. And that's letting you know when mut is spelled with the vulture, it's talking about the mother or a mother. But we're placed with this challenge that we don't speak in hieroglyphs, meaning we don't speak in pictures. So how, when it comes, what is the verbal equivalent of a determinative? The verbal equivalent of a determinative is what we call an inflection or an accent. So for the purposes of today's lesson, we'll distinguish mut as death and mut for mother like this. So we'll say met represents death and mwet represents the mother. So when we say mwet is a difference. So that's M-W-T or M-U-W-E-T, mwet for mother, mwet. So when you say it fast, it sounds like you're saying met, but it's still mwet, wet. And then for death, we say met. So met is death and mwet is mother. Met is death and mwet is mother. Lastly, met is death and wet is mother. So there you have it. The word of the day, which was formerly wet for death, but now it is met for death. Yeeti, and welcome back to the Communion Experience. So we want to just come on shortly today to let you know that today will be the last communion. Not the last communion forever, but the last communion of the calendrical year. Because the next communion will technically fall on the observance of the finalization of the ancestralization of process of our beloved Elder Baba Heru Ankh Samad Si Qatar. And after that, we'll be taking a sabbatical for the rest of the month. And we just want to let you know that there's nothing wrong. We're not falling off. We're not stressed. We're not overworked. It's just that we take transition very seriously. Not just the transition of our elder, but the transition into the new calendrical year, which is another level for us. So in that time, we'll be communion with source that we call the Neter and the Neteru and the Hemametu. The Hemametu are the ancestors. So in that time, we will be in deep reflection, deep meditation, and focusing on what is the next level without having to be overly concerned with feeding the machine of social media, because the machine is exactly what social media is. I know some people may be concerned or have questions about consistency. Here at the Templeofanu, we love consistency. We teach consistency. Consistency is smart, but it is wise when consistency is partnered with effectiveness. So we have to be consistent, and effective. That's what it is that we seek to do. So now, we don't consider ourselves abandoning anybody or abandoning our duty. So for those who do watch faithfully, I would request you do this, which is similar to what it is that we'll be doing on the back end. So you can either go over or review the videos for the year, because we stayed on course to the reading of the year. So I'm sure you all have libraries and you didn't just read your book once. Some books you read several times. I suggest people read books 7 times, because every time that you read the book, you're going to come out of the book with a new comprehension or a new understanding. So I suggest you go back and review some of the videos, because when I teach several layers at any given time. So that's one thing you could do. Go back and review the videos. Another thing is, I ask you to ask yourself, how do you feel right now? What is your vitality level? Do you feel good? Do you feel poor or low? Whatever it is, good, poor, or low energy or high energy, just acknowledge that. Secondly, I want you to think or ponder or intuit what it is that you think the Neter, the Neteru, and the Hemametu want from you. What do you intuit your charge to be? And thirdly, I want you to consider your current life circumstances. And when you can take all of those things, then you should begin to have some insight on how you are to proceed going forth into the new year. Once again, assess how you feel, your energy levels, intuit what you think your charge may be, and then thirdly, consider your circumstances in your life, and can you have resolution between the three? Are all three of those things congruent? And then you could say you're actually walking or leaning into your power, or walking in truth, or walking in your truth. Now, I know some may not agree with some of our methods and some of our teachings, and we're about to go over that today, because I know that there's no shortage of views, opinions, and beliefs in our community. So I ask you all to just ponder this. Since everyone has views and opinions and things that they think we're supposed to be doing, so I ask you to ponder this. There's a saying that I've seen over the past 25 years. It's an unaccredited source, but I've seen it in various TV shows over the years. There's a saying, it said, when you want to make the gods laugh, tell them your plans. Have you all heard of that one before? When you want to make the gods laugh, tell them your plans. I know the Muslims have a surah in the Quran where it says, man has a plan and Allah has a plan. And Allah is the greatest of planners. And then in the tradition of Kemmunion, we say, Neter loves obedience. Obedience is what Neter loves. So I know that word obedience may trigger some people, so just replace it with alignment. Alignment is what Neter loves. Neter loves alignment. All of that to say is that in the Kemetic tradition, just like any other ATR traditions, we have ways of communion with the source in receiving instructions on how to proceed forth. So when we say the source, we're talking about Neter, Neteru, and the Hemametu. Now, some may think oracles and things like that are nonsensical, and they may have a point, but this is how we see it. When we say Neter, Neteru, and the Hemametu, we see that as a metaphor for the database of the cosmos, our way of hacking or tapping into the intelligence of the universe as we know it. So we understand that thing to be a non-physical being, and as we say Neter is everything that we could perceive and everything that we can't perceive. Some say that's what their understanding of God is. Once again, Netter is everything that you can perceive and everything that we cannot perceive. So it is non-physical. So it is beyond what we can perceive. That means it is beyond our senses. So it is just as it is non-physical, then ironically, it is nonsensical. But in our experience, things always play out according to the reading. So as an initiate, we receive the reading, we receive the instruction, and we don't look to contradict it. We look to prepare ourselves to live into the truth. You hear everyone say, I don't get my op, that's to live the truth or to live in the truth. And you must prepare yourself to live in the truth. So from the perspective of initiates and the perspective of a priest and the suits we follow, on the back end, we get a reading, which is instruction on how we're supposed to proceed. And as far as we're concerned, it's not up for discussion with anyone else outside of our circle, because we don't follow the whims and traditions and the trends of humans. We follow the instructions of Netter. And when I say it's not up for discussion, that's not to be any disrespect. This is how we understand it to be. Now, for the past few years, the Netteru, and the ancestors has required us to fall back some. So when we say that it's not up for debate, when the Netter says fall back, it's not up for discussion. So what is it? So the only thing that's up for discussion is, what does that mean to fall back? And what are some of the things that we are to do when we fall back? So when you consider what does it mean to fall back and what are the things that we are to do when we fall back, that's not the same as falling off. So when I look at things, and when I teach my students and my priests to look at things, we look at things through the eyes of initiates and not through the eyes of our emotions. Because what does our tradition teach? Emotions are good servants, but poor masters. So we seek to make our emotions our servants. So it's not just a fancy saying. We want to make our emotions serve us. So you can say in the Sut, how do you make your emotions serve you? So from the perspective of an initiate, we see and recognize the principle behind all things and the patterns behind all things. So when you see with your first eye the principles that are at work that are responsible for the patterns, then you understand all things and you tend to be less emotional. You be like, oh, of course she did such and such. This principle is at work. Of course he did such and such. This principle is at work. So the world starts making sense, and because now you understand the principles and the patterns at hand, and you act and you fall in line, or you start charging and changing and shifting, changing and transforming things accordingly. So how is it that initiates see the world for this year according to our instructions, with the way the initiate sees the world, the principles that we see at play, the patterns that we see in action? We see that everything is waning. Everything in life as we know it is waning. We hear people talk about rat fatigue. You hear people talk about black fatigue. You see people are getting disenchanted with the political leaders. You see people are disenchanted with celebrities. You have this thing called decision fatigue. Where does this come from? This comes from 24-hour access to information all the time from our phones and our computers. So we're just fatigued, and everyone is just barely hanging on. So we're tired of everything. We're tired of rap, we're tired of black folks, we're tired of everybody. We're just tired. But could this be a self-fulfilling prophecy? Could this be the outcome of the conscious community? Remember, the conscious community was there to wake folks up. Be like, oh, I'm just trying to wake you up. You need to read more. You need to do your research, brother. Do your research, sister. I'm just trying to make you think. Now, people can't not think that it is overly stimulated with research, overly thinking out the box, just making things up. So now we've gotten to this point where we can't agree to collectively do anything for our collective benefit. And the biggest flex out of being conscious, the biggest flex out of being woke, is that you get to disrespectfully disagree with others. But that's neither here nor there. So the pattern that we're talking about is the waning of everything that we know, or everything that we were comfortable with. This is the year of the 9. We're ending on the year of the nine. So it's going to be the ending of a lot of things and a lot of ways of doing things. So we talked about death, transition, radical shifts, change, and transformations. We're talking about completion, or we're talking about closure. So the last level of this conversation is that of letting go. That of letting go is the year of the nine. Now, when you look at the number nine, and if you were to lay it on its side to the right side, it looks like something that's unfolding. So when we consider the idea of letting go, your ability to let go will determine your ability to let frustrations fly, or will you let the lessons apply? Your ability to let go will determine how long it is that you will hurt or how fast you will heal. It's scarcity consciousness that has gotten us all uptight about the idea of letting go. Everyone is so afraid of putting time and energy into things that you have the scarcity consciousness. If I don't do this, I got to force him or her to do this because this is my only shot. That's scarcity consciousness. So now you're forcing things and trying to force fit things. And that makes you miserable. It makes the other person miserable. It makes life just not pleasurable. When in reality, you should be opening the way to let some things go, to let people and things into your life that are in alignment. So we should be focusing on letting things go and emptying out. When I say empty out, we're not talking about an emptiness of barrenness. We're talking about preparing ourselves to be fulfilled, fully filled, filled fully. And that is abundance consciousness, or the consciousness of abundance. There is no shortages. You hear the teaching of in the Kabbalion, they say the all is mind. I say the all is consciousness. And what is consciousness? Consciousness is vibration. What is vibration? Vibration is frequency. This is all a metaphor of the new, or the noon, the state of infinite potentiality, which means that everything that exists and everything that ever will exist already exists. That is the noon, infinite potentiality. Everything that exists or to be created is already exists in vibrational form. It is up to you to be able to tap in and collapse a wave. This is quantum metaphysical language we're talking in. When you're able to tap in and collapse a wave, that thing is called manifestation. So all that being said, you get what's yours and you don't get what's yours. How do you tap in and collapse a wave? You have to make your vibrations clear. If you learn to make your vibration clear, you will never be, or you'll never want of anything. Now, that's our biggest challenge, because struggle has been programmed into our baseline vibration. I repeat, struggle has been programmed into our baseline vibration. So your baseline vibration, what is that? It is your core vibration. After all the chanting, after all the philosophy and all the conscious talk, what is your core vibration that you fall back to when you stop putting on airs and spouting the platitudes for the masses? So I said, with Black folks or melanated folks, struggle has been programmed as part of our baseline vibration. So when that happens, we get suspicious when things are easy. So when we get suspicious when things are easy, we then trigger the subconscious to start making things challenging or making things hard, just so we could say, I knew that was too good to be true. The devil is a lie. And even when I read some of the texts coming from our culture and all cultures, when we hear about the metaphor, the anger of the gods, the wrath of the gods upon us, or God has cursed people, you see the Israelites talk about a 400-year curse. There's no wrath of the deities. There's no 400-year curses. That's just your baseline vibration has been misaligned, and you've been living in cognitive dissonance, meaning you have not been living and acting upon that which you know to be true. So letting go. What is it that you had to let go this year? I had to let go a lot of things. I had to let go of my idea of having a big circle of influence, or influential circle, which I had for a time, and it was big, but however, it was diffuse, not powerful. It was almost defunct or stagnant. So I had to let that go, or let the idea of that go, and for a smaller circle with higher standards that are more vital and compliant and in alignment. So with that, I've liberated. I've been liberated. So what if you had to let go? I know in our community, many have to let go of their addictions. And I've seen people go through all types of gymnastics to explain how it's okay to indulge in different addictions and intoxicants. So I'm not here to judge. You have to judge yourself. So all I do is ask you the question. These substances that you indulge in, is it quickly getting you to be the best and the most appropriate version of yourself? Or is it a cap? Is it a cope? Is it a cape? Or is it a cover for your disappointment in yourself? Physics teaches us that two things cannot occupy the same space at the same time. So water and fire can't exist in the same place at the same time. If you ever seen water on fire, it's because oil was the medium, but water extinguishes fire. Fire evaporates water. So when we go from physics to metaphysics, we say two states can exist at the same time, or two states of consciousness can occupy the same space at the same time. For instance, you're either going to be a victim or a victor. You're either going to be a victim or a victor. You can't do both. So this tradition of ours teaches that by ipu neter, by ipu hek, my soul is divine, my soul is eternal. Nuk neter, nuk netret. I am divine. I am the God. I am the goddess. Whatever way you want to translate that. So we have these powerful concepts in our culture. Remember, two states of consciousness can't exist at the same time. You've either got to be the victim or the victor. The teachings in our tradition teaches us to be the victor. So you can't claim to be God, or you can't claim to be a divine being, neter or neteret, and then in the other breath you say, the white man has his foot on my neck, or he won't let me do this, and next year they're going to have us do this other thing. You see, that is the source of our problem. That's always been the problem. Elijah Muhammad taught us we were divine. Clarence 13X told us that we were divine. We always taught ourselves that we were divine, but we still have this contradiction of entertaining victim consciousness. So when you say you're the victor, then there is no problem. There is no obstacle. What do they say? There are no problems. There are just opportunities for growth, opportunities to demonstrate value, opportunities to demonstrate your divinity. So if you're going to be a victor, you have to take responsibility for the whole of your life. You got to accept all of it, the good as well as the bad, the fame as well as the infamy, as well as the defamation. All of that comes with being a victor. So when you could do that and be honest with yourself with no regrets, then you're on the right path in the right direction. But first you have to learn to breathe. You have to learn to breathe yourself into your divinity. You have to learn to relax. And that's a whole other discussion. But that's always been the dilemma. But this answer, or I'm going to ask you a question. I'm going to end with a question that can only be lived. It cannot necessarily be understood intellectually. You have to live yourself into the answer, and then you will understand. So I'm going to end it with this question, and we'll start off at the top of the year with that as the conversation, because you're going to have to learn to breathe. You're going to have to learn to relax. So the question is, how can I rest in my divinity and not be stressed by the idea of my divinity? Again, how can I rest in my divinity and not be stressed by my idea of my identity? And I'll conclude the lesson there. So once again, this is the last communion for the calendrical year. I don't know if you all celebrate any of the holidays. That's all up to you. If so, If you're going to be with your family, I wish you the best. If you're going to be by yourself, I wish you the best. I wish you peace and I wish you power. We'll see you at the top of the year. So let us say, Chimi Matep, Dianu, Uncle Jocelyn Nev. So go in peace, stay dangerous, stay powerful, stay ready, and most of all, stay righteous.